can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the keeping the palms joined. With the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you all here?
Our daughter and son-in-law.
That's very nice of them. Did they tell you where you were going, or did they just like drag you in here? Trying to figure out where you are right now? This isn't pizza. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. I saw a hand in the back. Yes.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. Or about?
I led a little bit of the secrets, and I've been practicing yoga for about 2 years, and my community is very much into this, and I've read it more and more. And this has always been a place that I've wanted to come and see.
Nice. Well, we're glad you made it.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up. Who else here for the first time want to share why you're here? Was there another hand? Maybe that was it for the first time. Yeah. Not sure if you're here for the first time. Not sure if you want to raise your hand.
I've been practicing on and off for some years, and around this place, it seemed really cool. I came for one of like the Thursday lessons, and I really like the vibe of the temple, and it's nice to practice the community.
Yeah, nice. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. And those of you crazy folks who keep showing up, why? Nothing better to do. So I'd like everybody to say good morning to Normal. Good morning, Normal. Normal, if there was an award for the most honest person here, it would be Normal. Hey, so those of you who just came in the back and are facing that way, would you like to come up and grab chairs?
You sit next to the most honest person.
Awesome. Plenty of chairs up here. Yeah. Yeah, all these years, and he's got honesty just nailed, you know? What else? Why show up here other than nothing better to do? For those who didn't hear Normal, why keep coming back?
Community.
Community? Yep.
Same.
Awesome.
Community.
Yeah, community.
To see you.
To see me. It's a good thing you're next to Normal. Hopefully,
Don't ever accuse me of being normal.
hopefully some of his honesty can wear off on you. I saw another hand. Why keep? Yeah.
I always hear something that I need to hear.
For sure. Yes.
The writers are on strike.
Right. It's going to be a fun morning today, I can tell. There was another hand. Yes. Minimize suffering. Wouldn't that be nice? Who maximized your suffering?
Maybe myself.
Maybe yourself. Maybe yourself or definitely yourself? Definitely yourself. And one more hand, and then I'm leaving this one alone. I saw a hand somewhere over here, I think. Why show up? Yeah,
Because it makes me happy
makes you happy.
to see everybody and to hear you
Yeah, it's important.
with the lessons.
Yeah. You know, all these things tie into, and what's your name? Sorry, you said minimize suffering.
Dolores.
Dolores. It's all about minimizing suffering. You know, Buddhist teachings can be a little daunting at first because, you know, you open up these books, these sutras, these teachings, and all of a sudden it says, end suffering. First, it tells you life is full of suffering, so that's completely depressing and miserable. And then it tells you that we're going to end suffering. And then that leaves you like, oh my, how the heck am I going to figure out how to do that? So there's kind of this starting and end point of life is filled with suffering, but then we're eventually going to end it. Super difficult. And for me, I personally love I always talk about reduce. Instead of this focus of like, let's end suffering by the end of the month, let's figure out how we can reduce suffering, minimize suffering, suffer a little bit less today than we did yesterday. And if we can work on that slowly, our lives will definitely transform and change, hopefully for the better. And if we can minimize, reduce our suffering, then that benefits everybody. Right? Because when we suffer, when we're in pain, when we're sad, when we're angry, when we're depressed, who has to deal with that? Everybody around us, right? And how many of you like dealing with people who are angry, sad, miserable, and depressed all the time? It's not so much fun, right? People do, they put up with us, thankfully, but it's a challenge. So we do this practice initially for us to suffer less, but ultimately we realize that the less we suffer, the kinder and gentler we are to those around us. So with that, I appreciate you all showing up. For those of you who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. We'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are maybe brand new, a couple things to tell you before you begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. All right, you'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a chair, same thing, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. However you're seated, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. It doesn't make you a bad meditator. And as a reminder, or for those who are new, you're not trying to think nothing. You're not trying to empty your thoughts. You're not trying to go blank. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll say things periodically to wake you up because you've fallen asleep, or remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into silence. And starting with your eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. Means dependent origination. This is the basis of Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from, or what you believe in, or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And very often in our lives, the present moment is incredibly difficult and challenging. So we're learning to be with life as it arises, which is filled with conflict. That's what we get. We've used enough things as escapes most of our lives. Some healthy, some unhealthy. But either way, if you're honest with yourself, you're constantly trying to escape from something to something, or from someone to someone, or from somewhere to somewhere. The present moment is incredibly difficult for most people to be with. Yet it's the only thing that's actually happening. Everything else is just some story in your head about something that happened in the past or something you think may happen or not happen in the future. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. It's learning to be kind to yourself, which is difficult for many people. And then every person you encounter every moment of your life. Which, looking out at all the kind, friendly faces in this room, I'm sure being kind to every single person you encounter is perfectly easy for all of you. So I'm still not quite sure why you're all here, since you're such nice people. But that's what it comes down to, being aware of what we think, what we say, and what we do in every moment. Think kind thoughts, speak kind words, do good deeds. That's it. But we sure do make a lot of excuses and rationalizations and justifications as to why it's okay for us to treat people poorly. So this practice is dropping all of that. Literally all of that. And realizing that you have every opportunity and ability to be kind. Every person. And kindness doesn't mean that you get taken advantage of. It doesn't mean that you can't be tough or direct or honest. Kindness doesn't mean that you're not going to say or do things that won't hurt others. Very often, honesty hurts others. But in many cases, honesty is kindness. It all really comes down to what's your intention behind what you think, what you say, and what you do. And if your intentions are all about you, then, well, that's where it's going to end up, all about you. And if your intentions are about making life kinder, gentler, more peaceful for those you know and love and the strangers, then that's how things end up. But no matter how you look at it, choice is yours, right? Minimize suffering or maximize suffering. That's up to you. It's not anyone else's decision nor control. It's yours. So I find for most people, that's probably the most difficult thing about this practice is it requires you to be brutally honest with yourself, to drop all the stories and facades and ego and mirrors and all that stuff, and just be honest with yourself. If you know you're being kind, then recognize you're being kind. If you know you're being selfish and mean and angry, then recognize you're being selfish and mean and angry. But at least be honest with yourself. Only then can you begin any spiritual practice. Otherwise, it's just a big facade. I won't spend too much time on it now unless someone brings it up later, but just dig into spiritual materialism a little bit. It's a beautiful practice, a beautiful teaching that reminds us that all the Buddhist books and all the Buddhist places and all the Buddhist people and all the things around Buddhism or any spiritual practice that you do doesn't mean much. It's what's in your heart and mind. As my master used to say, you can shave your head and put on a robe. That doesn't make you a monk. So with that, I'll pause and just open up to questions. For me, I'd really rather just respond to what's on your mind. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And for those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen. Feel free if you have any questions to put them there. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions.
The philosophy, I understand intellectually about wanting and desire creates suffering. But I'm confused as how you go about this, since it feels like we are literally hardwired for desires. And I was thinking about this morning, we come out of the womb crying for food. We start right off. And as children, we're programmed to want. And then the society bombards us nonstop. And I don't know what I'm asking. It's how would you go about conquering this? Because even that's a desire. I have a desire to become awakened, so to speak. You know, everything's kind of desire. So
Yes, it is.
It's confusing me a little bit.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Great question. And the good news is once you completely understand and conquer this, then you'll be fully enlightened. So it's just like one little thing, you know? Do you remember the movie City Slickers? You ever seen that? Don't ruin it for those who haven't seen it, but he says life is all about one thing, right? This practice is all about one thing, overcoming desire. That's it. Now, to get this out of the way first, because this is the easy part, just so you understand. The Buddha taught very clearly that there are healthy desires, healthy cravings. The desire to, as you said, awaken, suffer less, healthy desire. Unless you want to awaken and suffer less just to run around and tell people, look at me, I'm awakened. Is that why you want to do it? No. Why would you want to awaken? Why? Sum it up.
Just for the peace.
For the peace. That sounds like a beautiful intention. Keep that desire. Now, without getting into details, because I nor anybody here wants to know them, do you have desires that are unhealthy? Yeah. It would be good to abandon those. The question you're asking is how, right?
I thought they meant all desires.
I know, that's why I started with the easy part. Yeah, it's not all desires. We'll break this down. I'm starting with the simple part, to understand that there are healthy desires and healthy cravings. The desire to suffer less is a healthy craving. The desire to feel at peace is a healthy desire. Without that desire, without that craving, none of us would be sitting here right now. So it's not about creating a desireless, cravingless life. The reality is that's not going to happen anyways. First, as a practitioner, distinguish healthy cravings and desires from unhealthy craving and desires. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Second part, which you've probably heard me at some point in time, the metaphor I always use, as you said, as a child comes out, they're screaming. Baby comes out as crying, right? When a baby is crying, usually means one of a few things. I mean, it could be a million things, but let's simplify this, right? Why do babies cry?
They're probably hungry.
They're hungry?
Yeah.
What else? Angry? Tired? We talking about adults or babies?
Sorry.
No, you're good. Right? I always say we're just big babies wanting to be picked up and held, right? But they're hungry, they're tired, they need a diaper change, right? And as soon as the baby gets picked up and is fed or held or changed, all of a sudden they stop crying again. They can't use their words, so they cry. And then they I shouldn't say they immediately, some never get, but often they're then fed and they stop crying. And then that cycle repeats. Those babies become us. We are still roaming around, crying, screaming, needing to be changed, waiting for somebody to come to make it. Yes, we are conditioned. Well, I use the word conditioned. That's what I learned through Buddhism. The word program. We are conditioned, meaning it's a causal relationship. So as soon as we're crying and somebody picks us up, we're like, oh, that felt good. I'm not crying anymore. Oh, I got changed. That was great. How do I continue to? I scream and cry. They'll pick me up. They'll change me. Who we should be with. Everything tells us. Society is like throwing all of that at us. And we're just stuck. And we don't know how to unplug from that because we've been conditioned to be this way since birth. Again, I've answered nothing. I just am bringing us up on the same page here, right? Make sense so far? Okay. So then the question is, how do we cut through craving and desire? First, understand what your cravings and desires are. Like, honestly, without justifying them, right? So that's step one. What are your cravings and desires? If you need to write them down, write them down. If you need to categorize them as healthy, unhealthy, neutral, then do that and look at it. You might want to burn it afterwards so everybody doesn't see it. But healthy, unhealthy, neutral. Begin to recognize what are your cravings and desires, which are healthy, which are unhealthy, and which are neutral, right? And then when you see them, begin to understand that the craving in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is, what happens if you get what you crave, desire? You feel good temporarily. But what if you lose it? Anyone here have an iPhone? He's taking a selfie of himself right now. Thanks, David. What number iPhone are you? What number is that?
It's an old one.
This never works.
It works fine, I don't need it. Maybe I'd like a better camera, but I don't need a better camera.
It works fine. I don't need it. Maybe there's a better camera, but they'll target on you and say, oh, this guy's still stuck with his iPhone 6. How are we going to get him out of that, right? They'll throw more money at you and just resist because this one works just fine. So many of the things that we have in our lives work just fine. Everyone in this room has enough clothes to last them the rest of their life, I'm guessing. Might not be the clothes you want to be wearing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 days from now, right? Maybe our weight changes a little bit, so we have to adjust things here and there, but for the most part, we all have enough clothes to last us the rest of our lives. Y'all gonna stop shopping anytime soon? No, because I'll look better in that one. These things aren't bad or wrong. They don't make us terrible Buddhists because we go buy new shirts. It's just understanding that we have enough. And if we want to understand how to really cut through craving and desire with things that really impact our lives in a serious way, begin to recognize how attached we are to the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the phones we have, the cars we drive, right? These things that just get thrown at us. We must have more. The root cause of suffering is the Buddhist teachings, right? First noble truth is life is suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks, it just means you're going to suffer a lot. Most people at this stage of our lives are aware of that. The moment we're born, we're crying. So we come into the world suffering, right? And the second noble truth is the cause, and it starts with greed. It's the first teaching. We are filled with greed. What we have isn't enough. We want more. We need more. We got to have more. It's a constant more, more, more. And most of the things that we crave and desire are pretty meaningless. But then when it comes time to figure out how do we crave or how do we overcome craving and desire for things that are important in our lives, we don't know how to do it. Yet we're still attached to what socks we wear. You know? We get hungry. We crave and desire food. Nothing wrong with that, right? Anyone ever been to a restaurant and just sat down and said to the person serving you, bring me something to eat? I gave that example before, huh?
I love the way they choose.
Let them choose. Yeah. So one of my silly examples to overcome attachment, craving, desire, is next time you go out to eat, in case you ever go out to eat, you get the menu or you go up to the counter, however you're ordering food. You have your budget, say it's $10, $15, $20, whatever it is. You have your dietary restrictions, maybe you're vegetarian, maybe you're gluten-free, maybe you want a big fat steak, whatever it is, right? Tell the person serving you, I'd like anything on the menu that's, vegan and doesn't have carrots because I'm allergic to carrots, under $20. And here's a crazy thing. When they serve it to you, just eat it. And have gratitude for being able to actually order food and eat. But what do most of us do when we go out to eat? We sit down, we get a menu, we look at it, we want to substitute things, it's not prepared well enough, we want to return it, because we deserve, it's our money. We earned it. This isn't about that. This is about cutting through craving and desire and recognizing how wrapped up we are in our egos. Super difficult. Still didn't answer your question, but hopefully gave you stuff to think about.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of not material things, but just, philosophical things you want in life, like something to happen.
Same thing.
It's just the same thing.
Yeah, something to happen, but whether it's material things, philosophical things, something to come into your life, it's all the same. And what I mean by that is, even if it's like big picture things, we have these cravings and desires, and we're concerned about them. But we're still stuck with cravings and desires about things that are meaningless, is my point.
Yeah.
So practice with the simpler things, right? Wear socks that don't match.
That would bother me.
And then great. Yeah. Other questions?
It's kind of a follow-up.
Yeah.
A little complicated. So the longer I do this, the more time I spend in meditation, the more I read, the more I find myself not being kind of driven toward those things, right? The money, the prestige, whatever.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is I have a really hard time getting motivated to like earn an income.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep a roof over my head and like, day to day I feel great, but like
Yeah.
long term that's problematic for like the reality that exists. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
Without a question.
I've got a sleeping bag you can have, and if you need intense, we'll put a collection together for you, right? For those who didn't hear the question, it's, the more you read, the more you meditate, the more you practice, the less driven you are to be motivated by money, prestige, and all that kind of stuff. And that's the life that you're used to. But your fear now is that also means you're less motivated and,
It's not a fear. I'm like out of money every month.
Oh, okay. So it's not a fear you're out of money every month. There's a balance. And this is where you really, for me, introduce the Buddhist teachings on the middle path. And everybody's middle path is different. But you don't have to. I suggest you find a balance. Meaning, if your practice of meditation and, reading and things like that leaves you unable to provide for basic necessities that at this stage of your life on your spiritual journey, you are still attached to and you still need, then you got to tone it down a little bit, right? But the question is, right, to challenge back, you say, well, it's not good because I'm out of money every month. Okay, so this is the middle of May. So are you out of money yet? In May? Yes. Okay. So then are you going to, let's just say you're out of money already for May. So then are you never going to go out to eat the rest of May?
I don't want to get into my finances right now, but I'm making,
let's just assume for conversation's sake, right? Are you never going to eat anything out for the next 2 weeks?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. And are you going to completely change where you live and stop paying so much money where you live? And are you going to move to a place where you don't have to spend $2,500 a month for a 400 square foot?
Like for my rent.
I've been in San Diego 40 years. I get it, right? So the question is, we respond to these very seriously. We respond to these situations based on a preconceived idea of what we're used to. If you're going to go down that path, that extreme, then it requires extreme lifestyle changes. I know for me, you've heard me tell the story, but my master said 20 years ago, Jeff, you work so hard to make so much money to buy so many things. If you didn't have so many things, you wouldn't need so much money, you wouldn't have to work so hard. Changed my life forever. So I took 2 years going from spending a lot of money, or making a lot of money and spending a lot of money, to making almost no money and spending almost no money. Living in San Diego again, this was 20 years ago, but living in San Diego on $1,000 a month. Went from all the fancy stuff to no fancy stuff. Went from the cool this and that and the car and all that stuff to a 400 square foot nothing. Boy, did that challenge my ego. But it allowed me to do what I actually cared about doing, which wasn't hustling to make money, doing nonsense consulting stuff that made me miserable, just to buy stuff to feed my ego. Because I justified the miserable work with all the stuff I got. Say, well, look, I have this, so this is worth it. No, it's not. It was miserable. I was literally unhappy every single day. It required a slow, for me, it was 2 years, process. But throughout that time, I made sure that I didn't, which is where I fear from the way you asked it, and the blank stare on your face, that you're going a little bit too far to the extreme of not making sure you're still healthy and taken care of. You can't just pull the plug because it'll leave you unprepared. You can't throw yourself in the world of having no money and no shelter if you're not ready to have no money and no shelter. And for those who are brand new to Buddhism, this is not about having no money and no shelter. Quite frankly, now knowing what I know, I wish I would have kept all that money and all that stuff. Could have done a lot of good with it. You know? So, not about getting rid of stuff. It's what you do to get it. It's how you respond if you don't have it. That's really what it's about. What do you do to get it? And how do you respond if you don't have it? And this also ties into the same question around all of our craving and desire. But we are so conditioned to think that just because everybody else lives a certain way with a certain amount of stuff, that that's what we're supposed to do. This practice is, as referred to, as going against the stream. It's going against what mainstream culture is telling you to do. And billions of dollars are spent telling you what to do, what to wear, what to look like. What a nightmare we're living in. Every advertisement tells you what you should wear and what you should look like. And if you don't wear this and don't look that way, then you're just not okay. That's the world we're stuck in. This is samsara. This is the cycle of suffering. So this practice is to help you free yourself from that. Or you can just stay miserable and attached. Okay? We'll do one more question before we wrap up. Yeah, Tom.
When I first met you many, many years ago, you told me to read the Heart Sutra. And I still don't understand it, and yet I understand so much more now. Everything that you've talked about in one way or another, I can feel that it's all intertwined with that teaching.
Yes.
It's really the only teaching that I've ever. I'm not a book person, like going and trying to figure out all the philosophies and all the different streams and filling myself up intellectually. It's almost like with the Heart Sutra, I can just sit there and it baffles me so much that I don't need to try to figure anything else out.
Yeah, makes it easy, right?
Yeah. It's extremely easy, extremely hard, everything.
So, thanks for sharing that. So for those who didn't hear, to sum up, and then I'll finish with this. Tom said years ago when we first met, I told him to just read the Heart Sutra. And to this day, he still reads it. He still doesn't understand it. But he sees things, I'm paraphrasing here, but he sees the world just so differently now. And for someone who's not into reading a lot, that's enough. And for me, it was the same thing. But the Heart Sutra teaching, for those who don't know, it's the kind of condensed down version of what's called the Diamond Sutra. And this is the Prajnaparamita Sutra. It's called the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, is in the Mahayana school of Buddhism. And the Heart Sutra is it. Like it's the essence of duality. It's the often referred to as the emptiness teachings. Emptiness doesn't mean that things don't exist. It just means that the world exists completely different from how you perceive it to be. If you can understand that the world exists completely different from how you perceive it to be, your suffering will drastically decrease. Because so much of our lives are spent trying to convince ourselves and everybody else that our perception of reality, our perception of other people, our perception of ourselves is correct. As Thich Nhat Hanh, the late great Zen master, said, nirvana, freed from suffering, is freedom from views. It doesn't mean, the way I perceive that teaching, it doesn't mean that you're going to stop having views someday. It means to recognize how attached you are to your views and thinking that your views are correct. And then you spend your whole life defending them and being angry at people because they don't agree with your views. If you haven't figured it out by now yet, the world's not going to have your views. They're as stuck on theirs as you are on yours. And the Heart Sutra is cutting through this. And the baffling part, well, the good news about the Heart Sutra is it's literally like a page. I mean, I can recite it to you in like 60 seconds. That's it. And you will read it, and it will make 0 sense whatsoever. And you'll spend the next 20 years reading it, and it will still make 0 sense whatsoever. But as Tom pointed out, it's not about understanding the Heart Sutra, because there is no Heart Sutra to understand. It's about understanding you, and also understanding that there is no you to understand. And that's when it makes sense. The Heart Sutra, as many of you know, and for those who are new, the heart of Buddhist teachings, no pun intended, is the Four Noble Truths. First one, life is suffering. Second one is the cause, greed, anger, ignorance. The third one is the ending of suffering, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth one is the path. Eightfold Path, correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that's on Google for free, right? The Heart Sutra says there is no suffering, there is no cause of suffering, there is no cessation of suffering, and there is no path. There is no wisdom or any attainment. With nothing to attain, bodhisattvas relying on prajnaparamita have no obstructions in their minds. That's a piece of it. So you'll spend all your time in Buddhism learning about the Four Noble Truths, then you come across the Heart Sutra and says, you're not there. You're stuck in your view. And if that works for you, great. If you're perfectly peaceful and happy and everything is working out, then rock on, keep on going, you know? But if you're honest with yourself, most of us aren't there. And that's where practice begins. It's a complete breaking down of your sense of self and ego that we've been trying to build up our whole lives. And leaving us with kindness. Because when you're not attached to yourself, then you can be kind to everybody. Yeah, and we'll close.
It's like, lately I've just been thinking of it being acceptance and letting go at the same time.
Yeah.
And that
Sure.
makes no sense.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah. So then your next challenge is to recognize there's nothing to accept and there's nothing to let go of. The only reason you're having to accept things is because you're not okay with how they are. And the only reason you're having to let go of things is because you picked them up to begin with. So stop picking shit up. Join Pongs as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every day we have different practices going on with different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. We have a large recovery sangha, anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or whatever it might be. A handful of classes there. Nice. That was right on cue. Yeah? Nice work. Thanks. So thanks for being here. Felipe and my guest, Kat, you're all going to be out front. Yeah, so there'll be, if anyone wants to stick around and garden, there's our wonderful gardening crew and club that'll be out front. Buddha for You is open downstairs if you need anything. And for those who are mothers in the room, happy Mother's Day tomorrow. So thank you all. Be safe.